This is breaking news from Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Very good. My name is Walter Sipe. I live in Sunrise Manor. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner
Would you spell your last name for us, please?
I thought I had. I'm sorry. S-E-I-P. I didn't have any. They didn't have any cards.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Commissioner Sagerboom for his RJ article addressing Colorado River water. As a chemical engineer working with the Army Corps of, I sometimes had interfaces with the river and dams folks. So I read it with interest, expecting something substantive and perhaps forward-looking. Second, as once before, I again address election integrity, this time from the perspective of my own canvassing of county election in-person voting protocols and mail ballot accountancy. I shared my observations with the chairs of both county major parties, Law and Roberts. Neither has responded. The same can be said for several other activities that embrace the EI term, but must be hiding any overt actions other than enlisting poll watchers. There were 2 at one poll, and there were 4 others when I went to 965 Town Drive to observe mail ballot county procedures. There was a political piece that alleged the county was avoiding transparency at 965. I found just the opposite. I applaud the use of the smaller mail ballot drop boxes at each in-person polling location. There were knowledgeable guardians present and the mandatory shields were obvious. The boxes were driven to 965 Town Drive by a pair of election workers. KLAS showed a video that included such a delivery. While an observer at 965, I was told that these Dropbox contents were stored in the ballot vault overnight. An election department employee did infer that the seals and numbers were checked as Section 30 of AB 321 directs, but could not confirm that there was a count of the contents. I was not shown any reports. All poll workers allowed an hour of their orientation was the state's mandated forensic signal verification training. Each poll worker advanced that they were an election board officer because they had signed an oath on the 2018 election department form. None had been notified by the county clerk registrar in accordance with Section 68 of NRS 293C220. This further directs that the registrar should deputize an officer for each polling place. I saw no such person. I contend Mr. Gloria has ignored this personal responsibility. I have reported this, including specifics, in my emails to both major parties. In my opinion, his present protocol undermines the Nevada legislature's design of the oversight of polling and ballot processing procedures. At my polling place, I was shown the county's training manual pertaining to affirming that I knew it was a felony to vote more than once. Actually, the affirmation required by Section 6 of AB 321 is directed at whether I had already voted. I'd like my presentation attached to the meeting minutes.
Thank you, sir. Next, is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time?
You ready? My name is Mindy Robinson. I'm actually a candidate for Assembly 35. I'm already on the November ballot, and yet I'm here because this concerns me and my community. Now, I could go on with the weirdness that just occurred with the primary elections and how establishment candidates, some who didn't even campaign, beat popular grassroots candidates who did and who were favored, or how a sheriff who was so hated by his own voters, he couldn't show up in public without getting booed and heckled, somehow magically won against a guy who was filling rooms and leading rallies. But I'm not here to prove fraud. I don't have to. What just happened wasn't even close to a valid election. Let's start. What do we got here? So, even after you guys got sued for it, poll watchers were not allowed to properly observe the election. They had their views blocked by boxes, 6-foot walls around the adjudication room, which, if you don't know, is where workers can change your vote on you and you have no idea. Yep, no one was allowed to look at that. You had people blocking things with racks, temporary walls, and sometimes they had to be 50 feet away because apparently they're supposed to be eagles. You had 44,000 voters who had their ballots changed to nonpartisan by the DMV because whatever, so they couldn't vote for their party. They may not even known that had happened. You've got, oh, this is my favorite. You've got a box of thumb drives disappearing out of the back room. I don't know if you knew that. We had people watching boxes of ballots being loaded into a van and boxes being loaded from a van into it at night because, hey, more than one person can stay up at late at night if you want to pull it this way. We had some Republicans were told to vote on different machines and put their votes in different boxes, which I'm sorry, kind of weird. We had observers rushed, oh gosh. At election night, observers were ushered out of the facility at 11:30 p.m., even though only 10% of the votes were actually counted. I think I've seen that movie before in 2020. In total, there's about 293 violations, and I'm sure that number will only go up. I'm a registered libertarian. Technically, this primary doesn't even affect me, but even I can see something is wrong. Everyone thinks something is wrong except the people who keep magically winning their seats, even though they're despised by their own people and can't even look at me right now. We've got a problem. This is not a valid election. You are angering people. People will become more desperate as you indoctrinate and endanger our children, as the economy continues to crash, as you continue to do everything you do against the will of the people. We will become angrier, and you're gonna need a bigger room to hold us, so good luck with that. Do not certify this invalid election.
We'd ask you to refrain from doing that. Please come forward. Well, wait, just a minute, please. No, the reality is that I don't know if everyone here is on the same side or not on the same side. It doesn't really matter. But what we don't want to do is get in the way of comment. So let's just comment and have a seat. You can clap without smacking your hands. But the noise and the rest of it, we don't really need here. We're adults. Let's act like it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Erin Gomez. I was a candidate for a state assembly District 2. Surprisingly, I lost by 25%. It's really funny how in 2020, I decided to run because I got 3 ballots in the mail. My husband got a bunch of ballots in the mail. I looked at my voter history and his voter history. It says we dual voted, both of us. It says we early person voted and we sent in our mail-in ballot. As you know, I don't normally like to speak in front of large crowds. This was super important to me because all I hear is conspiracy theorists, conspiracy theorists. Nothing happened, nothing to see, nothing to see. I reached out to Secretary of State, nothing. I reached out to Aaron Ford, nothing. Nobody gives a crap. I know people who just got their primary ballot 2 days ago. Tell me how this keeps happening, and tell me how, like Mindy Robertson just said, hated candidates won by 90% of the vote. Really? 90? You really think we're going to believe that? It strikes me as odd that nobody wants to talk about it, not even Democrats. It's not a Republican-Democrat. But I even think some Democrats got, stolen. I don't think that's legit either. If you guys certify this election, then it is fraud. Because we're telling you there's a problem. We're telling you we're getting extra ballots. We are telling you there's double voting, dead people voting. We are telling you what's wrong. And you guys are closing your eyes and going, nothing to see. That's the problem. That's exactly the problem. So what you guys can do today is you can hear us. I spoke at a school district board for masking my kids. Nobody cares about us. If you guys cared, you would not certify. This is not a legitimate primary. Even people, left, right, center, are going, there's something to see here. We need to investigate. That's all I ask, is that you investigate. Thank you.
Did you bring with you today the multiple ballots that you
I have
say
a
you were?
picture. So I also filed my affidavits, and my husband filed an affidavit with Joey Gilbert's team. We did document it. I did send Aaron Ford all of the research, Secretary of
So
State.
you have still the 3 actual ballots?
I do not. That was in 2020.
Oh, okay. All right.
So for the double voting was in 2020, and that's why I ran for assembly.
All right.
Because nobody was doing anything, and I thought I could.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Mary Ellen Davis, D-A-V-I-S. I'm a Nevadan for 57 years. I never really got into this stuff, but I was having issues with my mail-in ballots because I was categorized as a Democrat. 2 weeks, my sister had got her ballot. I hadn't got my ballot. I'm like, where's my ballot? Where's my ballot? I ran outside to the mailman. I'm like, where's my ballot? And they're like, well, they're coming, like in spurts and this and this and this. And he shows me a stack of ballots that he had already had. And I'm like, well, where's my ballot? So I still haven't gotten a Democratic ballot in the mail. So in the process of this, I switched over my party to Republican. Boom. I get my ballot in the mail. Because of this, I was like, oh, this is kind of sketchy, and all those ballots that postman had in his car already. So my coworker said, hey, you want to go down and be a poll watcher? And I'm like, yeah, let's go down. I'm willing to do this. So I worked my 8-hour shift, and then after that, I went down with her to work from 4 to 7 to observe what was going on at the polls. Well, let me tell you, okay? I was on the one at Cheyenne, so it says A, training. So we go into the building, we look around and we're like, hey, where do you guys got the training? And they're like, oh, it's not here. It's all the way down to F, which I don't know if you guys ever been to that building, but it's pretty far. So we're like, oh, okay. So we walk down to F, and in the process of that, we're ringing the doorbell, knocking on the door, pulling the handle, and nobody is coming. So I'm sitting there ringing the doorbell. Finally, some guy comes out and like, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, we're looking to be poll watchers. We want to get trained. And then he goes, wait a minute. He goes to the back. Another guy comes out. He's like, oh, it's down the other side where the sliding glass doors are. It's like, really? So we go in there. We walk down this little corridor. Says training. We walk down, and they have a training center, 3 rooms with people in it. What's wrong with us? We don't fit in any of the categories that any of these people are getting trained in? And it's kind of like really sketchy to me. So she sends us off and says, we don't need anybody till 7 o'clock. So we're saying, okay, no problem. So I get out, we're driving around the building. As we're driving around the building, a little vehicle pulls up, backs into a door, loft, unloads all these boxes, and these 2 guys come out of the building. They take the boxes, unmarked brown boxes, into the building, and then he says, this is the last batch. The guy's car wasn't even from Nevada. It was an Idaho license plates. I got it all on video, and so this is kind of sketchy to me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Sean McGraw. I'm here today.
Could you, your last name?
McGraw, like, Tim McGraw, Tug McGraw, Phil McGraw.
No, I know how they spell their name, but I'm not really sure how to work that. So would you mind just spelling your name, please?
McGraw.
Thank you.
All right. I've never been into really politics. I served over a decade in the United States military, and I never voted because whether I liked the person I voted for or not, it never really mattered. And I know most of my service members felt the same way. But when I came out, the first time I voted was in 2020, and my adult life, and I'm almost 40 years old. And, I felt, kind of cheated, but I kind of brushed it off, and then never wanted to get into politics. And then I started working for Mr. Gilbert about 6 months ago, and I saw some pretty shady things going on behind the scenes. And as we got closer to the primary election day on June 14th, more and more started coming up. Went to the observation to be an observer at the counting facility, and it felt like I was like in a theme park, a tour, kind of just being rushed along, and never really got to see. And every question I asked was, I don't know. I don't know. How do you work at a facility like that and you don't know? I asked head directors or whoever, supervisors. Answer was, I don't know. How do you get into these positions and you don't know? How do you not know these questions? When I asked why there were single-sided ballots being pulled out of envelopes, single-sided ballots, Democrat and Republican, not just one side or the other, Democrat and Republican, I don't know. How is that? And there's more, hundreds of discrepancies, not being denied access to going and visually seeing, certain areas that were obviously being worked. Discrepancies on the last day of bins full of ballots that haven't been counted yet. On the last day of the counting. And those are, we've already contacted these people and they have to come in to get these, or sign their ballots or whatever. But initially when asked, I don't know. I don't know why there's bins full of, that boggles my mind. I mean, I'm not the smartest man in the universe, but, I can see, there's shady things going on. And if you don't know, and you're a supervisor or a director or whatever you want to call them, but you don't know, something's going on there.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Travis Ebarb, T-R-A-V-I-S, E-B-A-R-B. Right off the bat, I suggest that this does not become certified whatsoever. I have 9 discrepancies that are absolutely nonpartisan of why this should not be certified. Number 1, the Nevada revised statutes require ballot secrecy. And right off the bat, we had 5 violations before the ballot was even opened. You guys have been served this evidence, you guys already know. Number 2, ballots received by the Registrar of Voters did not have a proper chain of custody. We had no non-bipartisan chain of custody. There was no written documents. We've asked for them. There was nothing. We have absolute surveillance of this too. You guys have been served this. Number 3, the internet, or the MiFi, has been hooked up to all EMS machines and all voting machines, confirmed by certain Registrar of Voters, not only in this county, but other counties across this state. Court orders, number 4, court orders regarding the observation of our election process has absolutely been violated. We'll go to, that's not this county. Number 6, there was a violation of NRS requirements for equal representation from both parties, which was stated prior for election workers. We had election workers that were bused here out of state, when we had constituents in our county that were denied to be a worker in our electoral process. Why is that? We'll never get answers to that, I assume. Oh, let me go back here. Anyways, there's more, but at the end of the day, I don't see how you guys can absolutely certify this crime. And I really don't want to hear a disclosure statement of how you're separating yourself from accountability, because at the end of the day, you can't certify this crime. It's unreal, absolutely unbelievable. This is a non-partisan issue. We had it on both sides of the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Brian Davis, BRIAN-DAVIS. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, do so raise up our citizens to be servant leaders by a contest of voting to find the most populous person to represent the people in our republic, through a democratic process of voting to find the best of us to represent the government for the people, by the people. If this process ever comes under attack or is in jeopardy of failing from these attacks, we must take every precaution, go to any lengths to assure the validity and sanctity of the truthfulness of our democratic voting process. If we fail to achieve a truthful and honest election, then we no longer have a republic by the people, for the people. We left kings and queens as our rulers and founded this country, inspired by our Creator, enshrined in our Constitution. We the people do not consent to be ruled by kings and queens, by tyrants, or any other power. We demand transparent and honest elections. We demand a forensic audit to find any and all problems or subversion of our democratic voting process. We do not believe this was an honest and secure election. We call on the commissioners, appointed leaders, to not certify this election. Thank you, and thank God for letting me be the man in the gap. And I can confirm everything they've said. I was at the elections office for many days. I spent many hours there, and the default response from everybody, except for two people, Mr. Gloria and another individual there, their default answer was, I don't know. Hey, what's happening today? I don't know. What's happening tomorrow? I don't know. What's that over there? I don't know. If that's the standard that we go by, it's completely inadequate. All right? If only two people can answer basic questions and anything beyond that, then we need to go and clean house. Get some more people that know what their job is, know what they're doing, and can answer basic questions. Literally, I would question whether they knew where they were at, because their default answer was, I don't know, I have to go find out. Find out from who? Why don't they know how to do their job? Why don't they know basic questions about their job? What's going on? What's going on tomorrow? If I asked anybody here that same question, I guarantee you would have an answer, any mildly one or a very competent one. I'm sure anybody here would have the same answer. So that combined with a lot of other things that these folks have said, and I can confirm that this was not a transparent and clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Proffitt, SUSANPROFFITT. I would like to tell you that when we came in to observe, and we had to get a court order to do that. And unfortunately, we were denied the opportunity to observe without obstruction, without being removed from the area before the ballots were removed from the area. We saw so many violations. This is only a fraction of what I and my team put together. If you would like to read some of these, they're pretty shocking. I'm not going to talk to the fraud that I witnessed because you have all that documentation already, but I would like to thank whoever it was who warned a friend of mine that Joe Gloria, the registrar, was out to get me and remove me. And he did, without any evidence at all. I gave my phone to them, said, here, I just showed everybody. I wasn't doing anything but talking to text. They claim I took pictures. Well, you know, pictures wouldn't prove very much, but eyes do. And we have corroborating evidence, not just one eye, not two, but about 50 eyes, and some of them are sitting in this room. But I would like to ask you, please, to remove this man, Joe Gloria, because he's a thug, an absolute thug, and he did not receive us in the manner in which we came to him. We came to him as good people trying to set a baseline for the November election, not to find something wrong. But unfortunately, we found way too much wrong, and most of it started with him and his abuse of the people in our organization. He put a sick woman on our detail and refused to remove her for 3 days, and the only way she got removed was having to contact Barbara at the state of, Secretary of State. Okay? I had to file an OSHA report, and it was legit. We have 2 witnesses, and he refused to speak to those witnesses, but he claimed in front of a lot of other witnesses that he had a Metro police officer who refuted all of those claims. But the strange thing is that man doesn't exist. He was not there. So if there is a man in the Metro Police Office, I'd like Lombardo to find out who he is, because he's perjured himself, and that's against the law too. Please, gentlemen, lady, I would like to see you do the right thing. We really did want to set a baseline and try to improve the optics that are so horrible, and the optics only got worse. Really, really worse. And this man over here is an abomination, and he needs to be removed. And there are a lot of people who can testify to this. Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Bandiero, B-A-N-D-I-E-R-O, candidate for Board of Regents District 13. I've been a proud Nevadan for 20 years. When I voted in the current election, I personally experienced multiple election violations. I was told that my signature wasn't on file at the DMV. It took 20 minutes for the poll workers to find a solution. The computer in which they were trying to sign me on kept saying reset, 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 and just kept spinning. And finally, they just let me go and go vote, I guess. It didn't matter that my signature is not on file with the DMV for some reason. The poll worker asked for my mail-in ballot. I didn't have it because I hadn't received it yet. It wasn't delivered to my house until June 21st, in which I did make a video of that happening. Before opening my mail-in ballot, it showed right through that I'm a Republican voter. Our state doesn't allow this because the risk is too high someone could interfere with the mail ballots being delivered if the political party is visible on the outside of the envelope. I also posted that video on Facebook as I saw it coming in. Both candidates and constituents are contesting the election results, and the people of Nevada are demanding a recount. There are election violations, which you've already heard from Mindy, from Travis, and multiple other people in this audience, such as chain of command being violated, mail-in ballots delivered late, and no verification of signatures. So this past election does not comply with our state laws, where statutes were clearly violated. I personally believe there are gross absurdities that have made this election uncertifiable, and I contest these election results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Socorro Keenan. I ran for Secretary of State, and I want this on record. William McCurdy, Michael Naft, Jim Gibson, Marilyn Kirkpatrick, Tick Segerboom, Ross Miller, they're present today. I think the camera's usually on the audience, so we want to make sure that everybody who's here is counted. I need to know from all of you, who are the 4 county commissioners that certified 2020 elections? I don't know who they are. We don't know who they are.
That's all that's needed to certify that the records for 2020 elections. So we want that answer. And then moving forward, this whole voting system was about integrity all the time. That's why we are in the United States of America, and we need to be united. And we keep playing that fake it till you make it game. I've been here 39 years. I know a lot of the people here already from the past, but this is today. God's talking. Today's a very important day. Roe and Wade, guess what? We won. Finally, we won. Thank God for that. Because if it was up to the people that are in Nevada that think that they're in control, they're out of control. The ones that are in government, a lot of them. The other ones that don't want to stand up and they don't have the courage to stand up, we got problems. But this whole thing is about integrity. Number one, I pulled this list of all the candidates from the Henderson Library and Green Valley Parkway and Sunset. Now, I started with June 15th with 3,400 and so votes. I looked at my voting record 2 days ago. I'm 1,000 votes less. So you can't how can that be? Now, everybody knows the casinos, if we cheat in the casinos, what happens? If we cheat in any ball game or any sport game, what happens? We're out, out, out. But voting is the most important thing that has to go on for all of us. That's the only thing we can all participate in. That's our inalienable right. And I'm asking all of you to be prudent, and to have a conscience this time, and to do what's right for everybody, not for yourselves, for your pockets. It's over. God's talking to us. You need to do what's right, get the numbers right. If you didn't get them right, let's just go right and let's vote again. One ballot, one person, and paper. Let's do it one day, and we can all agree to that, I believe. So if you get together and do what's right for everyone, because when I worked for the governor, your dad, Ross, I had to do what your dad said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen and ladies, commissioners. My name is Michael Robert Kane, K-A-N-E. I'm one of the physicians here in town. I had the privilege of being able to go and observe at the Tabulation and Adjudication Center several times during the the early mail-in elections. What I wanted to make mention to you of is, first of all, at one point in time during the period in which I was there, First of all, I was sent around with ambassadors to several different areas, but only when they allowed us to go. This had to be done on specifically their time schedule, not open observation, even though we had an ambassador with us and available each time. At a certain point in time, midday, we were told that we needed to spend time in a conference room. We were there for a good hour and a half. I had asked several times if I would be able to just take a quick walk around the rooms to see with the ambassador if nothing was really going on in these different areas. There were about 5 or 6 different areas where things were going on. I was specifically told no. So I asked if they would ask those higher up. I was told the gentleman, Joseph, that's here, told them no by the gentleman who was sitting next to him named Dan, even though I had asked. So I was refused to be allowed to go and observe the different rooms, even though we were there and supposed to be observing according to a court order. I witnessed that myself. I cannot understand how that's transparency. As far as I'd like to make a suggestion to you. I'm really when I observed what was going on there, going from the different rooms, especially in the signature verification room, that was clearly connected to the internet. We were never able to see the signatures. We were never able to see the ballots close enough to verify they were real ballots. What I wanted to see was, I wanted to see the little circles filled in by human hands to know that these were real ballots. You could tell that there was a real process going on. I was never closer than 15 to 20 feet away from a ballot. I do not think that's truly observation, nor do I think that was the intention of the court when they allowed us the ability to observe. What we really need is a paper ballot. We need a one-day voting, except for the special exceptions that should be verified somehow as far as a mail-in ballot is concerned, so that we can actually have honesty and transparency. When I observed the system as it is now, I was shocked at the stupidity that you must think the stupidity you must think of your constituents, because no one in their right mind would have accepted what I saw. The money, by the way, that you're going to use to defend all of these things that have been the different things you've been served with, that money could better go to the schools instead of having to defend you all. I wish you good luck.
Next speaker.
Hi, aloha, Johnny Jackson, J-O-H-N-Y, J-C-K-S-O-N. If you guys certify this election, you must be smoking as much weed as Mr. Segerbloom over there, okay? Let me give you an example. I decided to vote at the East Las Vegas Library. I'm the only one in there. The rest of the crew that's there is looking at the lights or whatever it is they're doing. I gave them my mail ballot. The woman goes, "Oh, John Jackson, Republican." So everybody can hear it, but me and other people are the only ones in there. Okay, no problem. I decided to walk to one of the machines, and this guy says, "No, sir, come use this one." I said, "What's the difference?" So I use that one. Right now, my company, Aloha Consulting, is doing a poll, which I'm going to be releasing on Monday. Okay, 1,000 interviews, 62% at this point feel there's something wrong with this election. And some of you did have really unfavorable rates, especially you there, Commissioner Segerbloom. But anyway, it's coming out. Do not certify this election. Please. Thank you.
Next speaker. It appearing there is no other speaker.
I don't have anything prepared, but I'll talk. Take a breath. Pam Bennett, I'm back. Nice to see your faces. How's that COVID vaccine going for everybody? Oh, that's right, people are dying lately, every day. So you already know how you're going to vote. You voted yesterday, just like you do every time we come here on a Tuesday. You vote on Monday. I already know how this goes. You're not listening to us, but it's going to be interesting because I've got a box full of fun stuff that there's no way you can certify this election. I have payroll records that your employees just dumped in the dumpster. I have instructions on what to do with the Dominion machines that they dumped in the dumpster. I have video of people pulling up to the election facility, only one person at a time with big batches of ballots. Chain of custody? Not much. This is about as believable as the man that can't even ride a bicycle right now that is the president or pretend president of the United States of America. We the people know what's going on, and you have the opportunity to do something about it, but you won't, because Sisolak gave you your orders and somebody gave him his orders. We know what's going on. Please, for the love of God, do your jobs, because otherwise it's going to court, and it's not going to look pretty for any of you that certify it. I 100% can tell you that's happening, because I have proof. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danette Height, D-A-N-E-T-T-E. Last name is H-Y-T. I just would like to point to the American flag behind you all. And we all stand and we pledge to that flag, our allegiance to that flag. And in that Pledge of Allegiance, we say, one nation under God. Is that correct? It's under God, this nation. And I'd just like to remind, maybe not remind, but inform you that God hates unfair and unjust balances. It's in the Bible. He hates unfair and unjust balances. And this election has not been fair. And I just ask that you please, in the name of God, do not justify this election, because we do not want to have unfair, unjust balances as God would. Thank you.
My name is Helen Oseguera, Helen-Oseguera. I am also a candidate for Clark County. I am going to the general election straight. I did not have to deal with the primary. However, I'm also a voter, and I'm also a mom. I was very upset in 2020 when my son's vote was stolen from him for his first time voting, when they told his ballot was provisional, when we voted at the same time, the same day, at the machines, at the same location. Then, on top of that, I watched the shenanigans in 2020. And then it happened again in 2022. I personally have screenshots of Wi-Fi at 10 different polling locations. 10 of the same Wi-Fi. I also have evidence of my son's ballot, which I still have in my possession, showing that he is a Republican on the envelope. When I went to vote, they also announced my party at the voting center at Sunset Galleria. They said, "Oh, you're a Republican," very loudly. Then they turned around and tried to direct me to a certain machine. Fortunately, I am smart enough to realize what they were doing. I went to a different machine. So here's the thing. You guys are liars, you're cheaters, and I'm disgusted with the way you guys have propagated this election. You stole ballots, you mailed out ballots to people that don't even have ballots, they're independents that have been changed through the DMV. You have 40,000 ballots that can't be corrected because the signatures don't match. Come on, give me a break. We all know that was the 2,000 mules. You guys had people collecting signatures to steal this election. We know it, we have proof, and we have documentation. If you have any idea what's going to happen to this election in 2022 in November, you only know what's going to happen if this gets happening again. If you try to steal the election in November, after verifying this election, it's not going to look pretty. So I would think twice before you concede on this election and give us a certification. We don't want the certification. We want this overturned, and we want to revote on paper ballots one day only. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Christine Foresta, Foresta, and I'm just here to let you know how my experience went on Election Day. This is the first year as a Republican. I've been bipartisan. However, in 2020 when I voted, there was an issue with the machine that I went to, and it was that it was on the wrong date and time, and that was in 2020. 2022, I turned up at the same middle school in my district to vote. it was announced very loudly, Republican. I was like, oh, I don't recall that happening in the past. I got my card, and I went up to vote, and when I hit print, it was just a blank sheet of paper rolling around, and I thought, I know there's supposed to be something printed on there, not that I get a copy of that printout. It's kept secret anyway, but it was empty. So I had to go get a poll worker, which I thought was strange because here I am again, and there's an issue with my vote. I had to re-vote. So my concern was, am I going to be found to have an illegitimate vote? My ballot is illegitimate because now I've voted twice. I'm also a property manager, and I've been at the same property for 13 years. In 2020, I cannot tell you how many ballots turned up in the trash can by my mailroom. I noticed none of the names, and I know the names of all my residents. 232, it's not a lot. And I've known people from the past. I can tell you people who've lived there 10 years ago. I can tell you people that lived there before I worked there, because their mail does turn up. These names were unrecognizable. They had nothing to do with my addresses. So what could I do? Return to sender? Shred them? What am I supposed to do when I find these illegitimate ballots being sent to people? These are the things, left, right, in the middle, whatever it is, people are fed up, and people are going to get louder, and it just depends on how loud you want them to get. We know that this has been illegitimate. Please do not certify this, because it's all on your heads. You're looking like fools if you certify it. We don't want our leaders to be fools. We want you to be strong and be there for us and support us in our will, not in whatever political party has been, contributing to you and your livelihood. We need you to represent us. And people are getting very fidgety, and it's scary. It's a very scary world. I was afraid to come here today because of two things: the gun legislation bill that went through, and also Roe versus Wade. We already know people are losing their minds left and right. Due to what? I can only say the political climate. Thank you.
Excuse me, just one question. What, if anything, did you do with those ballots that you saw?
I returned to sender.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Pam Norman, P-A-M-N-O-R-M-A-N. I would just like to know how come Tick is allowed to vote when he's on the ballot. Conflict of interest?
I don't know. So your question is, he's sitting on this and he is a candidate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And eventually, maybe all of us sit under the law because we're candidates to get seated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can ask Lisa if she has a response other than I don't know.
Thank you, Commissioners. So under the Nevada rules of ethics that you're bound by, you would make a disclosure if it has a significant pecuniary interest for you. So since this is global and applies to everybody, that disclosure is not necessary, so he's allowed to vote.
Okay, so at the appropriate time then, a commissioner who is actually on the ballot would have to disclose so that it becomes a part of the record. But that because of the global nature of the vote, it isn't something that is unique to him, and he is not precluded from casting a vote on the question.
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead. That's the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment?
He needs to remove himself. Yeah. Fine.
No.
Fire Justin. Where's Justin?
Justin, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Mexico's nice this time of year.
My name is Nick Devereaux, D-E-V-E-R-E-U-X. It's nice to have some more people here this time. First time I came was 2 years ago when Right after I found out that Justin Jones spearheaded a lawsuit to get rid of our signature verification, but or at least minimize it down to a very minimal verification, and all the mail-in ballots started happening. And I don't know about you guys, but every single person in this room, I was by myself last time, and at least now we've got a nice little group of people that are waking up to what's going on, and we know it's cheating. It's obvious that if you introduce this type of thing, it's like putting fertilizer on a lawn. It's going to happen, and it has happened, and that's why there's more people here. And, you know, it's happening throughout all of the United States, not just here in Clark County, but the whole, you know, America's waking up to this open invitation to cheat. And we actually have now real proof. The sad part is that most of the people in government that are here now won't look at the proof. They will just dismiss it as being false and not real, and we're all making this stuff up. Well, as you can see, we're not making this stuff up. We're all here, and we know it's true. And my commissioner, Justin Jones, was here 2 years ago when I brought this up, the fact that it was, you know, this type of cheating, this type of fertilizer for cheating was being introduced. And I was just completely disgusted with that back then. You know what? It's really our fault. We let this happen. We let people like stay in government too long and not do what they're supposed to be doing, which is serving us, serving the people of the United States. And, you know, we see the corruption. It's not even, you know, the average person who has half a brain can see it. I can sit there and talk to many, many people that want to, you know, spew the talking points about how we're just making all this stuff up. But you sit there and you try to debate with them, and they lose the debate every time. And at the end of the debate, they call us all racists and bigots. That's where we end up. And I am not a racist. I've never been a bigot. My best friend was a different color than me growing up, and yet that's their defense. That's what we have to deal with, the average American citizen now, instead of the real truth about what's going on.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Abila, A-B-I-L-A. I have a question about the transparency of this process. This is so important to the Americans here in Nevada and our country. One of the things, I was an observer, and one of the things that I saw, there was not any cameras in the election building in all the process. So if there's transparency, and there's cameras everywhere, there's cameras here, on the street, in the stores, you can't go anywhere without being observed. And I found it very odd that there wasn't a camera documenting what was going on there. So that's a big question. Why? So if that could be answered, I'd like to know. I'm sure everyone else here would like to know. This process is so important to the lives of our children, and it should be completely transparent. That's all. Thank you.
Dana Alec, for the record, like Smart Alec, A-L-L-E-C. Just put a smile on your face, Marilyn. A little smart. So I'm just here to let you know exactly what happened to me on the day that I voted. I went to my precinct, and it was over off of Sahara and precinct number 5571 to be exact. I was one of the first in line at 7 o'clock, And at 7:30, the line started growing larger and larger, and we were starting to wonder, how come we asked a poll worker, how come we're not starting at 7 a.m. like we're supposed to? And the poll worker came out and said, we do not have the flash drives to plug in to the computers for the Wi-Fi to begin the process. Well, at 7:45, those flash drives finally appeared to be able to boot up the machines. And so I went through, and then I went to the poll worker and pulled up my records from the DMV, and they said that you're not registered, you're a nonpartisan. I said, how could that be? I've always been a registered Republican. And they said, well, according to our records, sir, you're only going to be able to vote nonpartisan. And he said, the only way that you're going to be able to vote today is if you fill out a provisional ballot. So I filled out a provisional ballot and casted my vote, and as of last night, I checked with the Secretary of State, and my provisional ballot has been put in the mail to me. Same thing happened to me in 2020. I was filled out, the DMV had switched my party, and they said provisional ballot was in the mail. For you, I know, Russ Miller, how many years did you put into the law? Nevada State Bar Association. Are you an attorney yourself, as your father was? My grandfather was an attorney for 60 years. I was not an attorney, but I was very close to my grandfather, and he reiterated to me that in a court of law that you only have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be able to be convicted of a crime or to be found guilty. And the evidence that was submitted to you guys, that you guys have in front of you, and all of the testimony that we have from everybody from the poll workers, we've proven beyond that reasonable doubt that this election shall not be certified. And I ask you guys to make a motion to have this election to be not certified and to have a paper ballot so we can have a fair and honest election. Thank you.
Someone else who wishes to speak?
My name is Carolyn St. John. My last name is spelled S-T with a space and then J-O-H-N. I would just like to remind you all of True the Vote and the two patriots that are actually in possession of a lot of evidence in the 2020 election. Possibly they might have evidence in this one as well. And I'd also like to let you know that they are working with sheriffs across the country, and of course they're not working with our sheriff because he's a crook who actually covered up the death of 58 people, and many were injured on his watch. He never investigated that. Mindy Robinson had to put together the information for what happened there. So this year, we don't even have a lesser of two evils to vote for. But I'd like to remind you of all of that because they're making headway. And even though they're not going to be in this state getting help from this sheriff, they're going to be all across the country doing it. We're getting our country back. And all of you people that are voting against the people, you're not going to be able to walk down the street just like that piece of crap Democrat was threatening all of us and all of our, representatives. Maxine, remember her? And she got away with it. They get away with all that stuff, but whenever a patriot says something, they go to jail, like Simone Gold. She's got to spend 60 days in jail for talking in the U.S. Capitol after they opened the doors that can only be opened from the inside. And she was invited in like all the other patriots. And then Mad Cow on MSDNC, she actually admitted that none of the people from Trump were even there at the time when all this commotion was going on. They were still over there with Trump. She admitted it live on air. So the truth is coming, whether you all see it or not, it's coming. And I would do the right thing because God is watching. And I don't know if any of you even believe in God the way that you behave. It's sickening. It's demonic. The way you treated children. Wow. It's just beyond my wildest imagination that people are so rotten and stinking evil. And you, lady, you're showing it on your face because you look pretty horrific.
You know, so I get that people get overwhelmed, but there's no reason for it to get personal like that. None. There's just no justification whatsoever. No, it's what you feel is personal to you. That's fine. But what you're doing is you're flipping it, and you're deciding that you're going to get. No, that kind of that stuff isn't helpful. Okay. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Come down, please.
Hello, my name's Christine Borello. I know you guys just saw me the other day. I love this place. Christine Borello, B-A-R-R-E-L-L-O. And I just want to say, if the tables were turned, how would you feel? This isn't about Democrat, Republican. It's just about a fair election. That's all we're asking. I was also observing the ballot counting, and as I was leaving, because they asked us to leave at a certain time, there was a woman in the lobby running with her cell phone, and the phone was on hold, and thought it was a little odd. And she said she was on hold for hours because her ballot wasn't properly looked at, and they had issues with her signature. And she came in running in the lobby and said that she got hung up on twice, and that she never had, a chance. And then literally it was like 10 minutes before they closed. So if it's only one person, it could be 1,000 people. And I know there's about 4,000 ballots that weren't properly vetted. It's on the website. It's all public. And also on observation, they let us see everything about ballots, but nothing about the machines. So when we asked about the machine and the software, we were pretty much denied any viewing. So if it's fair and transparent, we never saw anything in that transparency. But I'm asking you guys, please, to reconsider this, because if the tables were turned, you guys would be upset as well. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker.
Chairman, how are you? Commissioner Kirkpatrick. I was watching at home, and people are not saying, what I found out. So I just wanted to stop by and just found what I found. So after 2020, I got a walk team together.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Chance Bonaventura, Bonaventura. I got a walk team together, and what we did is everybody received a primary ballot, and it was returned in the general, and it was returned as they don't live there. In the primary, and it was returned as they don't live there. But in the general, they voted from that address. Those are the addresses we went to. And it's a universe of about 2,800 houses across the valley. We managed to get to about 800 of them over the course of a week, with an answer rate of about 15%, so 150 people answer. Well, we went in under the philosophy of proving that there was no fraud, and it turns out I ended up having 63 affidavits, which I have here for the clerk, and it was instances like this, where you say, hey, does blah, blah, blah live here? Oh, no, they haven't lived here in 2 years. They haven't lived here in 3 years. They haven't lived here in 8 years, right? And it wasn't willfully malicious, most of them that I could find, but it would be, for instance, like this. I go to an apartment, and I say, hey, does blah, blah, blah live here? Oh, no, that's my sister. It's like, okay. Well, does she live here? Oh, no, she moved to Henderson 2 years ago. Well, okay, so now you look at these and you say, okay, well, I haven't found enough evidence to show that any of the statewide or national races, there was enough discrepancy for them to be turned over. But if you look at all of our local races that come down to less than 100 votes all the time, Stavros Anthony, 15 votes, 136 irreconcilable votes that they couldn't account for. I walked for 6 hours in his district, and I have 3 affidavits in here of people who don't live in that district, who voted in that district. And so I just wanted to come down and say that we need to look at, the voting machines, whatever, is one argument, but we need to look at the individuals who may be voting under, goodwill in the district, but they don't know that they moved out of the assembly district or the county commission district or the city council district. And unless we're purging those rolls and we have races that come down to, 1/10,000% of a margin of error changes the race, unsolicited ballots are the reason, or could be the reason, and that's the problem, of altering these local, state, and then city races. So just wanted to stop by and just say my piece, because I didn't hear anybody talking about that, and I did the work, so I might as well submit it. So
If you brought those, then you can hand them over the glass there. Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Marilyn Green, Green. I'm a relatively new resident to Nevada. This was my first election here. As soon as we were able, after a 6-week wait, we were able to register our vehicles, and we did register to vote at that time. As the election day came closer, we checked frequently to make sure that we were indeed registered to vote. But what we noticed was our party affiliation changed 4 times without our permission. We wrote that we did not want a mail-in ballot. We wanted to vote in person because we aren't trusting the election system in Nevada. We've only lived here a little more than 6 months. But the county has given us good reasons not to trust with that sort of thing going on for us. We voted at Del Webb, and what we noticed when we went in, yes, it was announced that we're Republican, and yes, we were directed to machines. Little did we know, until my husband and I talked later, that for both of us, the results would not print. We said, oh, okay, that's fine, we know what we voted. But it seems real odd that for Republican voters, the results would not print. We also noticed that, yes, there were observers in that polling place at Del Webb. There was an orange tape on the floor, and it was as far distance from the machines and from the poll workers as it could be. There was no way any poll watchers could have seen anything from where they were seated. So I ask you, just with the information from this new resident, how you can allow this voting chaos to continue. It's obviously non-certifiable when people like me are saying, I didn't know I should get a printout. I didn't know that if they shouted Republican about me, that I would be directed to a certain machine. I'm very disappointed. And I think you should be disappointed too, as it's your responsibility as county commissioners to make sure that we have fair, open, trustworthy, transparent elections. And as far as I can see, it failed.
Next speaker. Is there another speaker? Come on down.
my name is Van Miller, and I just want to point out some
What's your
errors
last name,
that...
sir? What's your last name, sir?
Van Miller, V.M. Miller. So throughout this process, I've been knocking on quite a few doors, about 10,000 in total, and I can't tell you how many families who I spoke with that, for example, were three-person households were receiving 6, 7 ballots. You have many instances, and I think this is just a matter of canvassing if there was a serious desire to investigate these issues where you have a, three-person household that's still getting ballots for grandma that passed away years ago, that's still getting ballots for the 3 kids that went to college and now live in a different state. And I kept hearing these complaints. Other things that I've noticed considerable amounts of issues with are people that were trying to register Republican and had gone through the actions of registering Republican, only to find out when they showed up to the polling booths that they were now registered as nonpartisan. And this was happening in mass. I don't understand why when some of these races came down to 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, or 100 votes, these kind of, there's a general sloppiness with this mail-in balloting that, and also with these machines that are just so open to these inconsistencies and errors that I don't know how we could look at ourselves as a first world nation and running literally third world elections. You have a country like Mexico, which not only gets a voter ID, but they thumbprint every individual. In Mexico, you have somewhere like France when in 24 hours they count all their ballots. And these are, hand ballots and, paper ballots. And why do we have elections that are running 3-4 weeks and are so open to so many errors? Obviously, we know about the 44,000 individuals that were disenfranchised because of machine issues. And again, in races where people won by 50 votes, this is literally the differential that would have caused another individual to potentially win. This process just has so many issues. I mean, this is like a third world process. This, for anybody that's slightly intelligent and intellectual, you look at this and you say there's literally 100 points where issues could occur, fraud could occur, or errors could occur. None of that's acceptable in a first world country, especially as we sit here as the United States of America. We're supposed to be leaders in this world. We're supposed to be an exceptional nation. We're supposed to have American exceptionalism, yet our, elections are the sloppiest, the messiest, the most open to these errors, inconsistencies, and I just don't think that's acceptable. And these issues are going to keep happening. People are going to get upset, and this is a very destructive process. So overall, that's my point, that this process has to be changed. There's no reason why we should have so many errors in such a process.
Another speaker? Come down, please.
My name is Donna Whitman, last name Witteman. I've been a resident of the state since 1960. I'm ashamed of this way that this state has become. It's a disgrace, definitely a disgrace. I was a early voting worker. I saw many things that were wrong. People came in, the screen on this one person went blank. They just said, well, that's okay. They called the lead. The lead didn't know anything. They didn't know what to do. They had to call, they waited 15 or 20 minutes to call the election department to find out what to do. That's terrible. Also, another thing that people don't know is when they go to vote, they can change their party at the minute they vote. They don't have to wait for anything to come in the mail. You can change your party right then and there. That is not told to these people. They don't tell them. I don't know whether they're told not to tell them or what, but you can change your party when you sit down at that pad and you want to change your vote. That is not being told. Also, people are not being told that they can opt out of the mail-in ballots. That needs to be told. So There's a lot of questions going on that need to be answered. And I don't understand why that this department and you people don't put out this information, especially that man sitting over there. He's the biggest crook there ever was. Amen. That's it.
Let me ask you a question, ma'am.
Yeah.
You said the screen went blank and you waited 15 or 20 or 25 minutes to get an answer. Did you get an answer? Did you get resolution?
No, they did not. They just told the lady that it's okay. They didn't do nothing. The screen went blank. They said, don't worry about it.
So the lady
Nothing was
waited.
done.
The lady waited. You were told.
I was right there. I was standing right there.
She voted.
She voted.
Okay.
The screen went blank after she voted, and they didn't do nothing. They called the lead. The lead didn't know what to do, so they just let it go through.
And I don't mean to belabor this, but the screen went blank. So the screen that went blank was the vote, the print vote that was being...
No, the whole screen.
The whole screen.
The whole screen. So she wasn't able to go back and check to see that what she had voted for actually went through. And there wasn't even a printout on it.
All right, thank you.
And that particular machine, which was on the right-hand side, the third machine, did it more than once.
Okay, thank you.
And they did not take that machine off. They just kept using it.
Did you register a complaint with the lead person?
They don't know anything. They didn't know anything. They were on the phone for an hour with one lady because they didn't know what to do. I mean, this poor lady stood there and waited and waited and waited. I'm not even sure she even stayed to vote.
Thank you.
It was disgusting.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Alexandria, and my last name is Slack, S-L-A-C-K. I do multiple things within this election, and one of the things that I do is voter registration. And with that, I do that inside of our church, and so we make sure that all of our church congregants are registered to vote. And going through the process over the last couple months, one thing that we've really pressed is to make sure that everybody is checking their voter registration, making sure that their voter registration is correct, whether it's their address or their party affiliation, whatever that may be. But to make sure that everybody has that chance to vote. Coming up to election, when everybody started getting their ballots, we did press for the ballot preference forms, and we had all of our church sign for the ballot preference forms, at which over 70% still ended up getting their ballots. Nobody knows why, nobody knows where all those papers ended up going that were turned in. I actually hand-delivered those myself to the elections office, but nobody knows what happened to those papers that were submitted. The other thing, though, that I wanted to talk about, in addition to the poll watching and all the fraud that everybody has kind of expressed, is something interesting that we experienced is that some of our congregants were getting the Democrat ballots, even though they were registered as a Republican. So we would check their registration on the Secretary of State site, only to find out that they were actually registered as an independent. So as an independent, registered as an independent on the site, they still got a Democratic ballot, even though they were supposed to be Republicans. How that ended up happening, we don't know. But that's something like an anomaly as well, and that's happened to quite a few people. I want to ask that you guys contest against this election, mostly because not everybody was able to vote. Whether it was the efforts of stopping people from being able to submit who they really wanted to vote for, or stopping people's registrations altogether. All in all, it's not a fair vote when the citizens of Nevada are not able to accurately be counted for in that sense. So. Thank you.
Can you give us a name of maybe two people who received a sample ballot or a ballot in the mail you had registered so that we could look at those documents? Can you provide that for us?
I can provide you that. However, I will save that for court. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Hi, my name is Dr. Robert Brown. I want to tell you my experience at the Department of Motor Vehicles 2 weeks before the election. I wanted to transfer a title on a car, and And the DMV girl says, I got your paperwork ready for you. You need to register. I said, I'm already registered. 3 minutes later, she says, I got the paper filled out. You need to register. I said, what part of this conversation don't you understand? I've got my registry receipt in my pocket. I pulled it out and showed her. And I says, what is the problem? She said, well, we're supposed to get everyone to re-register. I said, not today. A few weeks later, I read in the paper there's over 44,000 questionable problems at DMV. Maybe we should look into that one too. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anyone else?
Tashana Thaxton, last name Thaxton. Somebody mentioned the poll watcher observation areas, so I wanted to come up here and talk about that because I was a poll watcher and that was one of my biggest complaints. The law states that the designated area must allow for meaningful observation. At least polling location Town Square on June 7th, they had me confined to a chair next to the entrance where no meaningful observation could take place. If a voter had been flagged as already voted and needed a provisional ballot, I wouldn't know because I was confined to a chair by the entrance. If a voting machine were not working, I wouldn't know because I was stuck at the entrance. The only requirement is for workers and poll watchers to be located in such a way that ballot privacy is maintained, so poll watchers should be able to observe from behind the workers, checking in voters so they can actually hear what is being said. And the poll workers had an aisle to walk down in between the voting machines that were facing out. Poll workers could also walk in there to be able to observe, but we are not allowed to. My question is, why? It's like we're being lied to, and then we get mocked when we get upset about it. So there is no transparency. There's the illusion of transparency, and then we point out how that's not true. We just get mocked and ridiculed for that. That needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandy Hernandez, SandieHernandez. I'm also a candidate for State Assembly District 10, and I will be going to the general. So where do I start? On election day, I was standing in line to go vote, and I noticed the sign where it says you can go in this line to vote, or you can go over here to drop off your mail-in ballots. And I had some mail-in ballots that I was going to drop off as well as go vote. And I noticed this lady who was suddenly appearing to receive some ballots, and she was speaking harshly to the people as they went to go drop off their ballots, and she wouldn't let them drop off the ballots as there were 2 boxes. And I'm thinking to myself, why are there 2 boxes? Why isn't there just 1 box? And she'd grab the ballots away from these people and say, you can't put the ballots in the boxes. And she was just like, so anyway, I said, why are you taking these ballots away from the people? And she's like, I'm checking the signatures. And I'm going to tell you this really quick because I only have 3 minutes. She told me she's checking the signatures, and we already know she's not checking the signatures because when you look on the ballots, there's the little peeky hole that on my ballot, you can see it says Republican. Why is there a hole on the ballot? Why is that hole there? It's a cheating hole. So anyway, you've heard all the testimonies from everybody here, and you guys can't certify this election. You just can't. Do the right thing. And that's all I'm going to say.
Next speaker.
My name is Audrey McCartney, MCCARTNEY. As many times as I've been here, I am not a public speaker, but I did observe down at the counting facility, and I can attest to everyone, pretty much everything that they have said, what had happened. When I first got there, they said that all of the areas were filled and people would need to be removed in order to have new people go in. So I feel we were being corralled into a certain area. We never got to see the other areas that they said were full, and other people never came out of those areas to have new people fill them in. Another area that was kind of ridiculous to me was the signature verification, which there were 2 computers, 2 sets of people behind us that we weren't even able to see what they were doing, and then there were groups of people up to the right-hand side. I, with a stopwatch, noticed that some people, you couldn't tell if they were rejecting them or approving them. And some of them were going 14 to 16 signatures in 1 minute, whereas another group of people, or 2 ladies, were taking up to a minute to just verify 1. So I don't understand. These aren't signature experts. They might have gone through some training, but listening to their discussions about, oh, do you see the loop of the P and the this and the that? And it was all about perspective and whether they agreed or not. And it wasn't, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I'm just begging you guys, please do not certify this. There's no way that this was transparent at all. I beg you, please don't certify it. Do what's right.
Hi, I have a question because I'm not very familiar with all these rules. Can I use my time for somebody else to talk?
No. Next speaker.
Okay. Katrina Ivanov, a.k.a. Mrs. Fix-It, a.k.a. Peter Killer. I was running for Assembly 42. I guess I'm still running for Assembly 42. In any event, there are a lot of things that you know are wrong with the election in Nevada, the primary in Nevada. And I want to ask you, do you guys have any kids or grandkids? Don't you want your grandkids to grow up in not a totalitarian country? America is the only country that is not either with a king or totalitarian or communism. This is the last place on earth that there is some kind of freedom, and that's what we're trying to protect. You don't believe me? Can you mention another country that has the freedoms that we do? There is no other country, Mr. Michael Naft, that has the freedoms that we do, and we're about to lose it. And if you have, and you should be loyal to your kids. I don't know if you read the Constitution and not just read it but understand it. If you did, you would know those elections were absolute fraud, because they shouldn't be recognizable from the outside which party the person is voting for. Because I heard from other people that they were actually put in 2 different places, one for Republicans, one for all others, and we don't know if they just took this and threw it away. So it's not just the one thing. I'm sure, I just walked in, so I haven't heard the other people, but I'm sure you've heard a lot. And I just beg you to think of your kids and their future and your grandkids, because I know you don't care about mine. Thank you.
Jim Butler. Clark County Commission consists of Jones, Michael Naft, William McCurdy, and Tick Sagerbloom as the ultra-left-wing bloc, according to what I'm reading right here. I want to thank you for housing the homeless in your campaign signs. You know? I want to thank Joe Lombardo for being able to fail up. You know, October 1st, he's going to be governor. That makes everybody feel mighty safe. This town sucks now. It really does. It sucks now. I've been here 30 years. I know the old school Vegas, and I know this shit, and I'm not very happy with this.
Hello, my name is Lorena Cardenas. I wasn't going to speak, but it's really hard to sit in the audience and see the same faces that are very stomach-turning to us because we've had such a bad experience. And the smirking, I mean, it's really disgusting too. This is the kind of reception we get from people we elected, we put up there to make decisions. And it's very disheartening. But we've come to a point now with the election that there is no election integrity. There really isn't. And my question is, how can you go wrong by asking for an audit of the election? At worst, the numbers would stay the same, but so we don't lose. Nobody loses in that. It's a win-win. You either restore election integrity, and that's all that you lost, right? Or we certify and find out something was wrong. So I'm just saying, we should really try to do an audit of this election, and I think we all come out winning in that situation. I also wanted to ask about the secret ballot NRSs. I'm not really familiar with that, but I did read that it wasn't supposed to contain the precinct number, the voter information on the outside of the envelopes for everyone to see, and that these envelopes, when they were Republican, they were being placed somewhere else. So that was basically alerting the people that were receiving the ballots which party you were voting in. So that itself, I mean, there should have been a secret ballot. It should have been kept private, and it wasn't. That is illegal. That process was illegal in this whole election. So just one thing alone being illegal isn't enough to decertify the election. And if it's not, why not? Shouldn't it be legal the whole way through in order for us to have integrity in our election process? Is it not worth it to you? Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Clark Bossert, C-L-A-R-K-B-O-S-S-E-R-T. And obviously you all have heard plenty of information, and it's my understanding that you all have received letters with evidence of everything that's been discussed here, so I don't need to berate that anymore. And I know that this is not fun, but what I want to say is that it's not too late to do the right thing. And whether you from a nonpartisan standpoint, do the right thing being there's plenty of evidence that there was big election irregularities, and I could go into my own testimony and my friends who received multiple ballots for people who didn't live at their addresses. I had multiple ballots with unique identifiers, and of course it's illegal to cast more than one, so I didn't. But these are all things that you know, that you're aware of, and so what I'm asking is, it's not too late to delay the certification or to call for some kind of paper ballot vote or something else. And so I'm really encouraging you, it's not too late to do that, and we're all watching. And so, you read like New York Times says democracy dies in darkness, and the Democrats say every vote counts. And that couldn't be further from the truth as far as how we feel as a community. It feels like none of the votes count, and our democracy is dying in a lack of transparency. And so this is super concerning. This is why we're here. I know this isn't fun to sit through, but the whole purpose of being a leader is that you lead at the hard moments, not the easy ones. Anyone can lead through an easy time. So we're asking you, whether it takes a 10-hour committee session to decide, hey, we really ought to reconsider our commitment to certifying this election, or whatever it is, we're just asking, would you please stand in the gap and do what's right? Because, you've had careers before this, you're going to have careers after, but this is a really pivotal moment. And y'all are smart enough, you make plenty of smart decisions with whatever other careers you have, and I'm just asking you, no one in good faith can certify this election. So thank you very much for your consideration, and I'm not just saying this anticipating that you'll disregard it. I really honestly am saying please consider delaying the certification because the government has a relationship with the people that it governs, and right now that is super fractured, and we can't go on for an indefinite period of time with this broken relationship, and there's a lot that you can do to make it better today. Thank you.
My name is Charles Ernest. Last name is E-R-N-E-S-T. I came here today just to listen. I'm going to ask you guys each a question. From everything I've heard, there needs to be an investigation. Mr. Naft, will you vote for an investigation?
Under our rules, we're not able to respond to you like that unless, no, that's the fact. We're not able to respond.
Are you kidding me?
We can inquire. You'll see what happens at the end of the meeting when we take action. So that's what we can do. That's the rule. Do we like it all the time?
Guess
No.
what? The rule needs to change. I'm sorry. This is a disgrace.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Hi, my name is Melissa Campion, C-A-M-P-I-O-N. I also have I wasn't planning on speaking. I have a question though. I live in Commission District F, and my commissioner isn't here. So can you tell me where Justin Jones is? Is that a question you can answer?
The ones who are not here, the one who is not here is traveling. He's not able to be here today.
Okay, so will he get, so he won't get a vote in this?
He will not be voting today.
Okay. Okay, and I just, to reiterate what everyone else said, my husband actually ran for the commission. Really, really disappointed in the things we saw and the, there is no election integrity. I personally, when I went in to vote, they asked for, I was going into my purse to get my ID. Oh, no, we don't need that. Okay, great. So then they said, can you sign the little form, or sign the little keypad, whatever, the little pad, and I did. But I signed in Campion, because that's how I signed quickly. Well, I saw it popped up, Melissa Campion, my full name, and I was like, oh, do you want me to sign my full name? They're like, no, don't worry about it, no big deal. So I know it didn't match. I didn't sign the same name even. They didn't make me re-sign. So that, they didn't verify my signature. They didn't verify my ID, which I knew they didn't need that. And then they, again, called out, Republican voter. Yeah, sure, and directed me to a machine. So it's just, there's just too many things that were not normal, right, that I think it does justify an investigation. So that's what we ask of you guys, to not certify the election, but to just look further in all of the things that just don't make sense. Thank you.
Next speaker. The public comment period is closed. We'll proceed then to the next item, which is the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
Move approval.
There's a motion to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Please cast your votes.
Aye.
The motion carries. And that's Commissioner McCurdy, who had to step out but is still on the still in the meeting by phone. The next item, Ms. King.
Item number 3 under your business section of the agenda is to receive a report from the Registrar of Voters to canvass the returns of the primary election held on June 14, 2022, and direct the Registrar to submit a copy of the abstract votes cast to the Nevada Secretary of State within 10 days after the election.
Thank you. Mr. Gloria.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters, Clark County. I'm here today to present the canvass report. I want to note that in the packets I provided, there's some information in there related to the canvass letter that I will eventually read into the record. There's an official summary results report also, certification paperwork that lets you view exactly what we do to statutorily certify the system and the accuracy of the tabulation, and also some election stats. And the election stats are provided simply for you to see that the mail ballot turnout is definitely starting to show a consistent trend. The majority of voters are voting by mail, and so we need to make sure and keep that in mind in future elections. At some point, we may need to think about decreasing the number of in-person locations so that we can balance staff and And the reason that we'd want to ship that staff is so we can ship more resources to the mail ballot process. I've also...
Okay, so here's the thing.
I've also provided you an election pin
Excuse me,
and
Joe.
one of the vote
Just-
stickers.
Mr. Gloria, just a minute. So we got to be able to hear this, right? I mean, it's got to be in the record. There are two ways to do that. No, there are two ways to do that. The best way is that all of us stay here in the room and we listen to the report. You had opportunity to make public comment. There will be another public comment period. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to voice your concerns, but we've got to be able to hear what this report is. And there are some things that will be in this report that have not been submitted in writing to us. We need to be able to hear those things too. So please, Mr. Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I start off, as I always mention in the Canvas report, it's a community event. When we put on an election, it takes help from the citizens as well as many people internally and externally from the county. Support from the county commission and county management put us in a place to succeed. The new poll book implementation was a great success. Working with the new vendor, No Ink, has given us a capability to report much more accurately and give us more tools to identify the discrepancies that we see in our reports. New work areas and additional facility allowed us to process mail in one location, which was a great improvement for us. We want to thank RPM for all of the work that they put into it. There were a lot of delays in getting the equipment that they needed to get us what we needed in order to set up in the new location across the street, and also to set up the new layout so that we could provide more opportunity for observers to monitor tabulation in our mail ballot processes. County staff to thank, other than the commission and county management. I would be doing a discredit if I didn't mention all the people that help us to put the election on. Bob Leake and his staff, the IT that we received was excellent. The support staff that they gave us and the additional staff that they provided to make sure that we were able to properly test our new poll book and get that rolled out for the primary election was excellent support from Bob Leake and his staff. Also a note on Dan Walker and his cyber team, who also put in a great effort to make sure that all of our information was safe. Dave Johnson and the automotive staff. DA Lisa Logsden, who was new in elections but did an excellent job in support. Thank you, Lisa, for your work. PIO Rep Dan Kulin, who was pretty much by my side throughout the voting process to assist with many different things that we had occurred during the course of the day. And then also a special thanks to the clerks from Las Vegas and Henderson. They provided resources and actually put them in the field for the county. The clerks actually went out and some of their staff to admin rover in many locations during several days of the early voting period and on election day. So we give them credit for going above and beyond and doing that for us. County payroll, HR and purchasing, training and recruiting. Doris Hoffman Curry and her staff had a lot of work, and there were a lot of deadlines that we had to meet there because they had to create new documentation for the poll book, which was completely different from what we were previously using. Over 3,400 poll workers were trained. The mail-in registration staff, Kathy Smith, and of course the mail ballot process folks who worked very hard in the off-season to implement the use of new equipment that gave us the capacity to read a much larger number of ballots more efficiently. Warehouse, Jeff Martin, who takes care of the voting machines and ensures that they're properly programmed, and all of the logistical support. Our new IT manager, Noemi Esparza, had a lot to learn and came on late in the election cycle, but did an excellent job. And of course, my admin and assistant ROV Lorena Portillo and Julie Barker, who do a tremendous amount of work in supporting the election. I want to talk a little bit about the certification and the audits. We are statutorily required to put an accuracy certification board together. 4 of those members were members of the city clerks that we're supporting. Keep in mind, I've mentioned before, but we are supporting all of the municipal elections on our cycle now. So Mesquite, Boulder City, North Las Vegas, and Henderson are all now on our ballots. 4 of those staff members were on the accuracy certification board, and we had 1 member from the Democratic Party and 1 from the Republican Party. Everything went off without anything to report, and you can view the reports that I have in your folder if you want more information. Of course, the hash code audit was run, the VVPAT audit that's also statutorily required, and the audit of the mail ballot processing unit.
Who were the members of the Accuracy Certification Board. Can you list those for us?
Actually, they're in your packet, Commissioner. I don't have...
But I want, do you have that in front of you? I can read the names. Lisa Mayo DeRiso.
That's correct.
Stacy Campbell, April Parra, Jeff Smith, Tammy McKay, Jackie Rogers. Were there others?
That was it, 6 members.
Okay. Just, you had your opportunity. Go ahead, Mr. Gloria.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and read the canvass report into the record. The results of the June 14, 2022 primary election were canvassed comparing the computer printouts of ballots counted and the results thereof, with the official ballot statement for each of the 913 precincts utilized in this election. There were 190 irreconcilable errors in the 288,683 ballots cast in the 227 precincts. 67 were in the mail returns caused by voters who voted their initial ballot, then updated their voter registration prior to the May 31st deadline. 88 extra votes were cast, 40 during early voting and 48 on election day. 35 voters voted in the wrong precinct during the early voting period. However, there were no tabulation errors in the precincts, and the foregoing irreconcilable discrepancies would not alter the outcomes of any race in this primary election. 1,706 provisional ballots were cast during the election. 1,594 were verified and counted. 73 were rejected because the voters were not registered to vote. 25 were rejected because the voter did not provide adequate proof of residence or identification. 1 voter voted in the wrong district or precinct, and 13 were rejected due to our inability to confirm residence at a non-business address. Audits were performed according to 293B on the hash code of our ICX voting machines and the VVPAT rolls for 2% of all machines used in the election. No discrepancies were identified. The Accuracy Certification Board also certified the functionality of our tabulation system to include our mail ballot readers, ICX voting machines, Agilis mail ballot processing machine, and tabulation system. All systems were found to be 100% accurate in the tabulation of votes and processing of mail ballots. The tests were performed before the start of early voting, the day before Election Day, and a post-election test the day after the election. There were no tabulation errors in the 913 precincts. Therefore, as the duly appointed Registrar of Voters of Clark County, Nevada, I do hereby certify to the Clark County Board of Commissioners that the results of the canvass of this election are deemed certifiable. Mr. Chairman, before we began the meeting, I want to go ahead and clarify exactly what you were asking me on. Election night, when we first released, we had a report that went out on our election night reporting. All of the data that was there for the contests that were voted during early voting and the mail that we had read that far was accurate. However, our turnout was incorrect on the software that we used to put out that election night report. We spent the rest of the evening until the final report trying to get that fixed in the software. However, we were unable to do so, so we went to our redundant system and put out the final unofficial results that night on our old ENR system, and all of that information was accurate and correct.
All right.
That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
A couple of things. Have you received affidavits from these people who have come forward to speak today, offering their observations of irregularities? Do you have affidavits?
Yes, we do. We have EIVR reports that reviewed with the Secretary of State. Many of these were not actually given directly to our department. They were submitted to the Secretary, who he and I reviewed them together.
You're certified. Okay, and they were all of the irregularities discussed and reviewed?
Yes, they were.
Okay. What about evidence of the multiple ballots that were sent out and things like that? Have you received evidence of such things?
Any ballots that are returned to our office, other than the post office returning undeliverable ballots, are immediately looked into in the voter registration system to determine whether or not that's a ballot that we should be removing from the system, or a voter who is no longer living at the address. And then we have federal requirements through the NVRA on what we need to do with those. So we have to send a notice to that voter and give them 30 days to respond, after which we can inactivate them. But everything that's returned to our office is researched, and we do look into the system to see what the issue is.
And were all of your actions compliant with the requirements of the state, which are well beyond our control? Were all of the rules and regulations followed in terms of the state, the state and federal guidelines?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. They were.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Are there questions of members of the board? Do you have questions of Mr. Gloria? That's enough, please. That's enough. We've heard you. We heard you before. We hear you now. It's not your turn now. You're going to get another turn in a few minutes, but it's not your turn now. Do any of you have questions of Mr. Gloria?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no further questions, I move for approval of item 3.
Okay, so there's a motion to certify the election. And let me just look at the action. So we've accepted the canvass. Is our action an actual canvass, or is our action a certification, Mr. Gloria?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that your action should be to certify and instruct me to send to the Secretary of State.
So your motion then is to certify?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on that motion? Please cast your votes. Please cast your votes. Aye. Are there questions? The vote is in, and the vote is unanimous. The election is certified.
Thank you, Commissioners.
So the next item of business is we'll be in recess for 10 minutes. This meeting will be in recess for 10 minutes.
You are currently watching the vote certification at the Clark County Government Center on the Las Vegas Review-Journal stream. After a series of outbursts from the crowd, Joe Gloria from the Clark County Elections Office provided data and information to the Clark County Commissioners for voter certification. After doing so, the County Commissioners heard from him after hearing from public comment and did take in information and certify the vote from the primary election in 2022 in Nevada. We will have more information as everything develops and as we head into the general election in 2022. You can follow more of that on LasVegasReviewJournal.com, and you can watch our newscast twice a day, every weekday on 7 at 7 on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Review Journal website. We also have content in Espanol, and you are able to watch that as well on all our platforms for 7 to 7 in Espanol. For more information, please look at our website, LasVegasFreeJournal.com. This has been James Schaefer, reporter for the Las Vegas Free Journal. Thanks for watching.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.